We're going to do a published hold today. Not a hold. A published arc, excuse me. So a published arc. We're going to use the ILS runway 15 at Ted Stevens. So we're essentially going to be, I'm going to set us up to be south, right by Fire Island, give or take. And the idea is we're going to join Ivan. So we're going to join the radial 288 radial outbound from Ted Stevens VOR. And the initial approach fix will be Ivan and follow the TED 22 DME arc and then intercept the 149 localizer heading into 15. I've got Anchorage Center playing in the background just to make it a little bit more realistic in that sense. And so first, before we'd fly, let's just say we brief ourselves of this approach. So we got to make sure we got our heading for the, not heading, but the frequency for the localizer. We know the approach course is 149 degrees. We've got a 10,000 foot runway landing area, a touchdown zone of 151 feet. The elevation is 151 feet. We'd put all our frequencies in, obviously, to listen in. Right now, we're listening to Anchorage Approach on 118.6. And I'm not going to do a full briefing, but we're going to essentially join the radial 288 to Ivan, initial approach fix, 22 DME arc, and intercept the final approach course inbound from 3,300 feet down to the initial, down to what will essentially be Yon, and then start descending from Yon. So from Yon, we'll go down from 3,300 feet, descend down to Card. Card is our intermediate fix, 13.2 DME out. We need to be at 3,000 feet at Card. And we'll descend down to 1,600 feet at Kanzi, which is a 6.2 DME from the localizer. And then at 1,600 feet, there's the lightning bolt, so we should pick up the ILS glide slope all the way down to 15. Altitude of 351 feet is our DH decision height. That would be 200 feet above the ground. And our missed approach will be straight out to 800 feet, right turn to 3,000, heading 200 degrees. Intercept the TED 210 radial to Jukib, which is 10 DME at 10 DME out from the 210 radial and hold. So we might do the hold as well. We'll try and do that missed. Let's go ahead and jump into the airplane. We are, like I said, just south of Fire Island there. So before we get going, let's go ahead and put in TED, because that's what we're going to use for the DME. We're using the TED DME. Hit enter. Activate. We also need to know our frequencies 113.15 and 111.75. All right. So we'll go ahead and tune on VLOC 1 here. So just 113.15. I'm just going to verify that in a second. Obviously, we'd tune and ident in real life and listen to the Morse code. And 111.75 will get set up with the localizer as well. 117.75. Keep forgetting it. There you go. So we've got that on standby. We'll make sure we're on nav mode for this particular case. And in the other airplane, it's separated. The frequency is separated for the VOR and the GPS, so we don't need to do that. But if you're OBS or CDI, this device is able to link to either the GPS or VOR. You need to make sure that you've got this set right. In this case, there, the CDI will tell you whether it's GPS or VLOC. All right, we're 12 DME from the Ted Stevens VOR. We want to intercept the 288 radial. So let's verify that. The 288 radial till we're 22 DME to get us to Ivan. So 288 radial outbound. So I'm going to go ahead and, since it's from, we can put that on the top, 270280288, and that's what we're intercepting right there. So we'll go ahead and start the airplane. And we need to be at 3,300 feet. So I'm going to make the airplane climb to 3,300 feet. And the 288 radial is to our right, so we need to keep going till we intercept that 288 radial, and then we want to go 22 DME out from it to intercept the arc. Remember, it's from a VOR, not to a VOR, so it's going to be right turn, right twist, right turn. So right, right, right. So as we approach 3,300 feet, we'll hold that there. And we're just waiting. At this point, we're just waiting. We can also set up in our GPS as a backup. We can go ahead, and that will help me, instead of having to switch back and forth to look at the approach plate. We'll hit proc, approach. PNC is where we're at. The approach that we're going to try and shoot is the ILS-15. And we are going to Ivan. And that is something I will double check real quick. Yep, Ivan, 3,300 feet, arc 22 DME, and then descend down to 3,000 for card. So we're gonna go ahead and load and activate approach. That's just for our guidance purposes, just to help us out. And it's really telling us to go, the GPS is gonna tell us to directly go to Ivan, but in this case, we are going to intercept the 288 radial. So because this has the GPS set up, I'm going to use this backup GPS, the Garmin 430, as our, let's see here. DME to TED, because that's what we need to know for how far we are. Okay, there you go. So we're 17 miles away from TED. But we're trying to intercept the 288 radial. So we're still flying whatever heading we were given last, and we were told, let's say ATC says, intercept the 288 radial outbound from TED and join the 22 DME arc. So that's what we're doing. We're going to speed ourselves up a little bit. And all we're waiting is to see this needle start coming in. And we're still a little ways away, so I might even bump us up to try and get into that. We're at the 2.4. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and, there you go. Accelerate us just a touch. Oh, I think I overdid it. Clearly overdid it. Let's back it. Okay, there's the 277 radial. Okay. So it should start coming in. All we're doing is waiting for our CDI needle to come in. We're on the 288. We're going to turn 288. So we're just waiting here. Here comes the needle. The needle's alive. We're at 3,300 feet. A little bit below it, that's fine though. And we're gonna intercept that 288 radial outbound. So as it comes in, start to turn about half deflection there to 288. And I can even reactivate that so that it looks better in terms of the GPS line. And now we're waiting. This is the DME from TED. We're using this as our DME for now, and this is our backup GPS. We're 13.5 miles away, so we need to intercept the 22 DME. So we're at 3,300 feet on the radial, looking good on the heading. Now we're gonna wait till it says 21.5. So remember, half a mile away, we want to lead it in. Let's start thinking ahead. So we're going to start turning to the right, make the OBS turn to the right, and then turn 10, twist 10. And then so our initial turn to the arc is right, and we're going to continue going right, and we're going to twist the OBS to the right as well, or make the OBS card go to the right as well. That's because we're going away from the VOR. Remember, if we're going to the VOR, towards the VOR, and then they want us to arc, we would do initial turn, and then the other two turns will be opposite. So it'd be, let's say, left, right, right. In this case, we're going away from the VOR, so it's going to be an arcing away from the VOR, so right, right, right in this case. Initial turns to the right, and then arcing to the right. So we're a little off course here, so let's go ahead and adjust accordingly. Give it a couple degrees. We are, what this did was not the right thing, so you always want to make sure we got this set up for TED. I think when I redirected it to Ivan in the backup, it's connected to each other, so it redid that. So we're going to go ahead and redo and make sure we've got the right DME. There you go. That should say now how many miles away we are from TED. Nope, it's not. Activate, enter. All right, what we're going to do then is just change this to TED, and I'll reactivate the arc later. There you go, 12.8. We're going to use this one because it clearly is. I've got this as a add-on because this is similar to the GPS I would use. This is a 430 or 530 actually, and it's a little older. I'm used to this one as well, but this is what most small airplane GPSs now are moving towards, this sort of functionality. So we're at 14.4. Our first turn is 90 degrees, so we want to look at, we can even use our OBS here. Right turn initially would be 0 to 0. So we're going to turn to 0 to 0. And then we're going to twist this to the right. Make this go to the right. So the next one will be 300 essentially. And our next turn will be 030. So as soon as we get to 020, essentially what you're going to do is turn to 030 at the same time. We'll speed up just a touch. And we're waiting for 21.5 on the DME, 21.5. So we're at 17.8, 9, 18. We're just waiting till 21.5, holding 3,300 feet. There's the 20 DME coming up. There's Ivan on our GPS, just as a backup, but imagine this died. So that's the concept there. 21.5 is coming up here, so I slowed it back down to normal speed. There's the 21.5. We're turning to 020, twisting this to the next 10 degrees, and then reading again what our next turn will be, 030. So as soon as we get leveled out, we're going to turn to 030, so we might as well just go ahead and do that. So if you go a little faster than 100 knots, you want to preemptively turn instead of 0.5, you might want to turn 0.7 DME. So the faster you are, the earlier you'll need to preemptively start the arc. I am saying half a mile out because of our speed. So it's about a half mile, so it's like 5% of your airspeed. So if it's 100 knots, it'd be 5. If it's 120, that's like 6.6 miles out. So we should have really started right about 0.6 miles out, give or take. So we're doing all right there, 22.1. This is starting to center. And we're just flying the arc now. So we're just going to fly the arc until, so here's where things get interesting. We have to look at our approach plate, right? So we've got to intercept the localizer. So let me just get to the next arc and then tell you how we're going to intercept the localizer. And really I should put the localizer in our backup VOR. If you only have one VOR, you're going to have to be switching back and forth. Or you might actually not be able to do this approach with just one VOR. As we center, so we're going to twist. Read is 040, so turn to the right, 040. While it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and reread the approach. So we're going to be at 3,300 feet until we intercept the, basically a Yone, which is the localizer, 149 inbound to the localizer. Now note the VOR is different from the localizer. So we'll go ahead and use the backup or the secondary OBS for the localizer, 111.75. So we're going to go ahead and tune that. There you go. And we are intercepting the 149. And what I'll do is once we're intercepting the 149, I'll switch this over to be the predominant one so that I can have the glide slope as well. Now that we are on point, I can go ahead and can also go hit procedure and activate the approach. And now you can see the arc that we're doing as well. As this is centering, we need to get ready for the next step. So turn, sorry, twist, then turn. Twist, 050 is our next heading. And there's the arc, looking pretty good. What I'm looking for is this to start centering. Once it gets to about half deflection, then I know I need to turn fully to a 149 heading. I've got this here just so we can see what it should look like. again, because I activated the approach on the GPS, the DME is not showing the DME from TED. So if you had a backup one, like, I wonder if this one will do it for me. Yeah, it might. Oh, shoot. It's not working on the backup, but this is coming in. So we're just waiting for this to center. We're flying the heading, we're flying our arc, it's coming in. So it's going to be a twist 10 to the right. Heading of 060.
And so go forward to when you're able to report your intense movement, like landing here on IR905, I don't see your entry point where you're at.
All right, this is starting to come in. Matches with our GPS telling us, hey, it's coming in. We're gonna just fly it with the localizer rather than the GPS for the time being, just to learn. Right about half deflection, right about there at the speed we're going. And start our turn to 149. And that should center in pretty nicely, and that's exactly what we're doing. A little off because my arc was just slightly off. And this is where, once we're established on the localizer, I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to get the glide slope in. And we're flying a 149. And remember, it's 3,000 feet, down to 3,000 feet for card. We're just a little off. Obviously, the GPS was a little bit better than my timing with this CDI. Pull the power back just a bit. Do your initial gumps check. So gas on the carriage, make sure props. Carb heat if you have carb heat. Everything's looking good. And now we're waiting for, so you would have a DME to, so let's go ahead and IBSC. So let's see if I can put it in here. 3,000 feet. So let's go ahead and hit Alt. And let's see if I can. So there's the localizer DME, 17.3. Let's correct our heading there so we're straight on. And card, we're going to use it from that point. Card is 13.2 DME from the localizer. So 13.2 DME from the localizer. So obviously, because we have a GPS as our DME, we'll be using the waypoints on the localizer on the GPS, but if we had an old school DME, we would tune in the frequency for the localizer and it would tell us what our distances are. All right, everything's looking good. I'm on track, 15.3, so we're waiting for 13.3, was it? 13.2. Okay, we're on center line. And then from 13.2 DME, we can descend down. We can descend down to 1,600 feet and intercept the glide slope. That's essentially what we're doing there. And we're going to just follow the glide slope from 1,600 feet all the way down to the runway. I've got a good power setting for, well, now I can add the power back in. I was descending, but I'll put it back to normal cruise or slow speed cruise. Holding the altitude, holding our heading, watching the OBS and CDI, double checking the GPS, waiting for 13.2. And at 13.2 DME, we're going to go ahead and start our descent down to 1,600 feet. And so since we're descending, I'll pull the power back a little bit again. Like to 20 to 22, anywhere there. To kind of get a nice 90 to 100 knots descent during the descent phase. So we're just flying the approach and we're descending down to 1,600 feet. Once we're at 1,600 feet, we're going to hold it until the glide slope comes in. All right, as we get close to the 1,600 foot mark, we're going to start getting ready to level off for a little bit and verify where we should be intercepting 6.2 at Kansi, so 6.2 DME from the ILS, from the localizer. So we still got a little bit ways to go. Went a little below 1,600 feet, should be at 1,600 feet. At 6.2, the glide slope should start coming in. And watch your speed and watch your power, obviously. So I leveled off and needed to add some power. There you go. So 6.2 DME. Starting to come in there. And we're just going to follow the glide slope in. A little bit to the left. So we're going to go a little to the right there. Just to center that needle. The glide slope's coming in. 6.2 for Kansi. And we'll start our descent once the glide slope comes in. So in this case, the glide slope's in. I'll pull the power back to a nice 17 to 1800 now. It's our final approach fix. So and descend down at about 500 feet per minute is usually the goal. Might set one notch of flaps. It really depends. Clicks over the fix is my other saying. So if this was an uncontrolled airport, I'd click 5 times or 7 times for the lights to turn on. And do my gumps, gas, undercarriage, mixture, props if I have a prop control, carb heat, mixture props, and safety belts and switches. So make sure the lights are on. So fuel pump is on, gas, undercarriage, mixture, pumps, props, lights are all on, and there you go. Probably put 1 notch of flaps in. Get that power set nicely. Watching my glide slope. 1 notch of flaps just to kind of help us descend at 90 miles an hour, give or take. I like to aim for 90. Obviously it's a busy airport, so they want you to go a little faster if you can. Just follow the glide slope. So glide slope's getting below us, so a little bit faster in the glide descent. I don't put the rest of my flaps until I see the runway. Obviously I see the runway, but that's because I didn't put the clouds on. This is just to give you an idea of what it should all look like theoretically. And so see, we're lined up pretty nicely for runway 15. Here, approach would probably hand you over to tower. There's a couple other radio calls that probably will happen. As we come in, getting way below our glide slope. So just monitoring the glide slope, monitoring our speed, monitoring our power, making sure we're on the right heading and on center line. So as we get closer, just watching that center line, making sure everything looks good. As you get closer past the inner marker, it gets pretty sensitive with glide slope and everything else. So now we're below our minimums. I forgot to call out minimums. Sorry, I was busy doing other stuff. But we'd call out at 350. Minimums look up, and there's the runway. And obviously, I'm a little off course, but there you go. Here you'd set your last notch of flaps and start landing, And we didn't do our mist. I'm not going to do our mist today. We'll maybe do it another day. This is a super long runway, so power out. Go ahead and turn off the autopilot. A little off center. And there you go.